Welcome to the Prime Life Project podcast, a place to help you unlock your full potential, both mentally and physically, to become the best version of you. Welcome back to an episode of the Prime Life Project podcast. I'm your host, Daniel James, and today I've got a fantastic guest for you. Today, I've got Claire Unkefer, who is an intuitive and transformational life coach, energy healer, and speaker. And Claire helps people get to the root cause of their emotional pain, limiting beliefs, and navigate through patterns and reclaim their joy. Claire, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Very, very welcome. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today. Like I say off air, I've had a crazy day today. And as I was coming into it, finding my peace and finding my calm before we started, I was like, this is going to be a great episode. But before we get into it, because there's so much stuff that I have heard you speak on that I've not heard anyone else talk about in the way that you do. Before we dive into that, can you sort of take my audience back to how you got into this space? What is it that made you sort of realize that this is what you wanted to go down? Because your background, if I remember correctly, is actually as a mental health nurse. So what kind of make you break away from that?
Yeah, so nursing. So I started out in mental health nursing, but then I was a clinical nurse. And I love nursing. But actually, and I've never told this part of my story ever, actually, but I was just, the thought popped into my head. But I very first got into this, I was in a car accident and I hurt my neck and I went on this, journey for this neck pain. And somebody said, you got to go see this woman. And I was like, okay, whatever. I didn't even ask questions. I was just like, I'll do anything. And she kind of had her hands on my neck, but wasn't doing much. But I felt movement within my body. And kind of like I was levitating. And afterwards I went, what did you just do to me? And she said, that's called energy work. And I said, well, I felt it physically. And she said, well, you're really sensitive to it. And that led me down a rabbit hole. I had to find out everything I could about it. I started working with it. I started working with clients with it. And then I started, it just started expanding. Then the sessions became not just regular energy work sessions where I had my hands on people's bodies, but we started talking. We started talking about emotions that might be held in that area because I was sensing them, and then we would release them. And so it went down this journey. But while that was happening, in my personal life, it was so great. I was able to help people. In my personal life, I was struggling with depression and anxiety and my own inner demons and struggles. And I started applying some of these things to myself. You know, we always say nurses are the worst in taking care of ourselves. We take care of everyone else.
I was going to say, but the industry that you're in, because again, I've worked with a few nurses, you're not taught how to look after yourself. You're taught how to look after other people. But in my head, it kind of makes sense of nurses would struggle, especially with some of the stuff that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
I think it's like a personality trait that every nurse I've ever known, and I've worked with a lot of nurses, there's an innate desire to help people, to help other people. And it makes you feel good to help other people. But yeah, I just even relearned that lesson this weekend when I was waiting for my son to get home from work, my 18-year-old son to get home from work, but I really needed to go to bed and he was not getting home. So I called him and said, are you okay? And he said, yeah, I'm just hanging out, blah, 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 blah. And I don't get to see him very much because it's always in the passing by. And I looked at my husband and said, I love him. I want to see him, but I can't wait around for him at the expense of my own needs and health. So I'm going to go to bed. And while that sounds very intuitive, it's against my nature.
Yeah. Your natural thing is to actually want to stay up and just pour into the people, not realizing that your cup's being drained.
Yeah. But I've had to learn that the cost is too high to do that. And you can either choose to start pouring into your own cup and putting yourself first, or not even putting yourself first, but prioritizing yourself, or you can wait until it's a crisis and you have to. And that's where I ended up. I ended up in a crisis where I had to go, wait a second, I have to do things differently. And I ended up what I call healing my own depression and anxiety. And I felt called to help, and spread the message, because it's not a narrative that we're told. The narrative I always got was you're inherently flawed, crazy, or broken. Mm-hmm. And take your medicine, go to therapy, and good luck with that. Cope and manage the best you can. And that is not a very inspiring and hopeful message. And it doesn't make you feel very good as a person. It makes you feel helpless and powerless. And I was actually surprised to learn that we have much more control over our mood states and our thoughts and our experience than I ever was told or realized. It doesn't mean it doesn't come without work, but it's much, much better than just being at the mercy of your feelings and moods.
I think that's the interesting thing. I think we spoke about this when we spoke initially, is that I am not against antidepressants in the slightest. I'm not against any of that stuff. Like, there's a time and a place for them, absolutely. But my issue with them is exactly what you said. It's, here's this, do that, off you go. And that's it. So, I've got this for the rest of my life, and this is just me now. Like, I'm going to take tablets for the rest of my life, and like I said, I'm just broken. So how did you then come to this realization that there was more? Because, as I said, you were almost like brought up within that sort of space to almost accept it. So what then made you think, this isn't actually the way that I'm going to heal through this? Like, what was that sort of transition like for you?
Yeah. And before I go there, I just want to comment that, here's your medicine, take it. People still have depressive episodes on antidepressants. People still have anxiety on anti-anxiety medicine. And the answer to that in the traditional medical community is to put you on another medication or a second medication or to up your medication. And the answer is never, well, let's find out what's really going on here. Let's find out what's causing it. And so that, and, I saw, in physical stuff and in mental stuff in the hospital world, there is kind of, it's helpful up to a certain point, but then there's this gap there where they can't help you anymore. not with what they know and teach and prescribe. And so I went on this journey, and what I found, the game changer for me was subconscious work. And I'm not talking about zoning out and being all hypnotized, but tuning inward, let's say it that way. Tuning inward and finding the answers that are within you and healing what actually needs to be healed. And we often don't have direct conscious access to that information, which is why we can't heal. And we're frustrated, but we just don't have access. So once we kind of turn our attention, I found this whole other world, this subconscious world. And the thought went, why doesn't everybody know about this? Why isn't every therapist recommending this? And I have clinical licensed therapists come see me as clients because it is not taught in their world. This root cause, let's find out from your brilliant subconscious mind that knows everything about you, what's really going on. It knows. We don't have to ask anyone else outside of you what's going on. It will tell you exactly what's going on and what you need to know or do in order to heal. Now you have to act on that, but the information is there.
I think a lot of times people don't know. That's the thing, people don't know, do they? I remember the very similar thing myself when I first understood this subconscious stuff. And for me, I always say to my clients that once you understand this stuff, when you see those quotes and memes on Instagram or TikTok where it says change your thoughts, change your life.
Yes.
You actually understand what it means, because people are like, oh yeah. And they love to reshare. But I'm like, that's just surface level stuff. You don't understand what these things actually mean. But once you really start to unpick what that really means and then do the work, you can't read stuff the same anymore. Like, I've got something next to me that says,
well, you're not
energy.
The same,
exactly.
Right? You're not the same. Things are different because you are different, because
Absolutely.
You believe different, you think different, you feel different. And so that's how change is affected in your life. You go into this subconscious world, you uncover what you need to uncover, you rewire what you need to rewire. And it's much easier to do with much less effort on that subconscious level. Most of the time we spend a lot of energy on behavioral changes, and especially in mental health, on feeling changes or thought changes, but we actually need to go even further to the beliefs around the thoughts that are causing the feelings, that are causing the behaviors, that are causing the outcomes. So
let's just quickly, just for the audience, just to clarify on this, when we're talking about subconscious, what does that actually mean? Because people, again, heard the word, they kind of know what the word means, but if people just aren't familiar and a bit like, I understand what you're saying here, but like I'm a bit lost with beliefs and all this stuff. Can we just have a real quick definition for people? Like, what does the subconscious, what is it?
So the subconscious mind is the mind that brings in like millions of bits of information per second, you know, and then you have your thinking mind that makes a list and thinks about, what do I want for dinner? And but your subconscious mind takes in all this information. It's this amazing filtering system, but and it kind of guards what needs to come into our conscious mind. We can access what's there intentionally simply by intending to go there, wanting to go there, desiring to go there. And some people would say, so my definition of the subconscious is a little different. Some people say, oh, you got to be hypnotized. And I've done that before. I've hypnotized people. The way my viewpoint changed is I had a lot of clients, people are afraid of being hypnotized. I had a lot of clients that said, I don't want to be hypnotized. Like, and I tried to, you know, talk to them like, there's nothing there that's going to surprise you. Like, it's not the kind of work I do. It's not like we're uncovering some secret that's going to shock and awe you. But people were like, I don't want to be hypnotized. Okay, we won't. And so I didn't hypnotize them, but we went through the same processes and they were having the same effects. And so I was like, wait a second. So I just have to get people enough out of their thinking rational minds and down into kind of a lower wavelength, if you will, the brain waves of, which is just called relaxation and tuning inward, and the answers are there. And guiding people to do that. And I can even tell when someone's talking to me, they'll pop back up into their rational mind. And I just gently guide them back down into where we need to be, you know, and because as soon as they start unloading their story or telling me a story, or I think this, you know, we're back up into our thinking brain, and that's not where the information is that we want. We have to explore and uncover what's there, then we think about it and rationalize it later.
It's like bringing it up to the surface, isn't it? Like, you can't do anything about it until you bring it to the surface and you're aware of it. And again, like all the programs and conditioning we've got in that subconscious, there's nothing we can do until we're aware of, oh, so that's why I do this, or that's why I do that. And you can't
judge it. Yeah, you can't judge it. You can't say this doesn't make any sense and try to start making sense of it. You're just unearthing the information. And then after we've done that, now we can talk about it.
We can see, though, why people get scared of it, because most people will do anything to not spend time with themselves. And then basically what you're saying is, oh, right, let's go figure what's out. Let's beneath the surface. And people are like, oh, no, hell no. Like I've avoided this for years. And you're saying, well, what we're going to do is I'm going to hypnotize you, and I'm going to go in there. And you can see why people freak out. But as you said, when you get them to the state where, again, they're aware of what they're doing in a sense, they're not thinking about it, but they're aware, it gives them that sense of control to kind of go in there in that sort of safe environment, because people don't want to go there by themselves because it can be a murky place.
We expend a lot of energy not knowing what we already know. But I think once you uncover it, actually the feeling is relief. Actually, the feeling is like, because you've got this kind of, when something's wrong, but you're not sure what it is, you've got this feeling kind of, it's like an under irritation of, because you are trying to figure it out. But then once you uncover it and you become consciously aware of what's going on, it's a relief. You feel lighter. You're like, thank God I found the answer. I've been searching for it for, you know, years. And so it feels good. But also if people could know, we're not going to, we're not going to rehash experiences. What we're looking for is beliefs that you've formed about yourself or the world around you that are causing you pain today. Oh no, just we're searching for the beliefs that you have or conclusions that you came to. And we go to the moment that you came to that conclusion or formed that belief, and something happened, and your little 7-year-old self was like, oh, I'm never going to be happy. Like, that's just not for me. That's for other people, but not me. And then that's a belief that you have.
And that's what I say to people, like, beliefs are just thoughts that you've kept on thinking, like maybe once, twice, whatever it is. But again, it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts. And it's just realizing, well, where's that come from? And something you said earlier on, which is want to sort of loop it back to, is that you already know the thing that's bothering you. You're just not allowing yourself to go there. And I think there's a really key thing there where I kind of interrupted you, which I'm now kind of glad I did, because you sort of then mentioned about that 0 to 7. Like, that sort of 7 is a real key thing. Because, again, we don't have that ability to critically analyze, and we kind of make it about us. And I've heard you talk about this as well. So can you also kind of like talk about that? Because from a year earlier, especially as parents, if you've got a child, just like how important it can be to make sure that we are as best as possible keeping that sort of that nurturing environment, because kids make it all about them. So some of these beliefs that they've got, it's just stories that we've told ourselves at a young age, and we've created the meaning behind it, but the meaning is not the actual thing. So can you sort of talk a bit more on that? Because I've heard you talk about this before. It's brilliant.
Yes. So I have 4 kids, by the way, and when I did start studying this subconscious world and these formations of beliefs in those early years, it was a little like, oh my God, I've ruined my kids. Especially the older ones. Good luck with that,
it's like,
guys.
Sorry.
Right. No, but there's a lot of repair you can do, because children live in a brain state that's very suggestible. You don't have to hypnotize them. You don't have to relax them. Their brain waves are in the same state that I try to put adults into in order to affect change. So anything you say to them, they will take as law, you know what I mean, as truth. And so that I have a 3-year-old right now. My other kids are older. Damage is done. No, not really. I'm joking. But the 3-year-old, what I've told my husband is the most important thing is what he's making things mean about him. Our responses, like if we're mad at him because he colored red crayon all over my new freshly painted wall, he did do that. And even because they're so sensitive to our facial expressions and our displeasure. And so even though I didn't yell at him, he knew I was not loving it and I was upset. Like, oh my gosh, buddy, you know? And he was like, oh shoot, I did something wrong. Right. So he could make that mean I am bad. Right. As simple as that. I am bad. Or this is it's my fault mommy's mad, or it's my job to make mommy happy, whatever it is, you know, and that's why it's so important that we find out what exactly it is. He internalizes that. And the really sad truth is that children will blame themselves over parents. You know, as we grow up and we become adults, we can look at our parents and go like, well, they were in a lot of emotional pain themselves. They did the best they could. It wasn't about me. It was about them and their capacity. But children don't have that thought. They're just like, I'm bad. I'm horrible. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I'm, you know, all these things. And the reason they do that is it's safer to believe that, because our subconscious mind is all about safety and survival. It's safer to believe that than to believe that the person taking care of them is incompetent. It's really crazy, but you know, what would that mean if the person that's taking care of me is not up to the task?
I'm then in danger.
Then it's over, game over for me. So instead, they'll make it mean things about them. So we have, even if I have a reaction, then there's always like a short 3-year-old version of a debriefing where, you know, it's just like, oh, buddy, like you forgot for a minute that we put crayons on paper. Where else do we put crayons? We put crayons on this, you know, easel. We put crayons here, but we don't do it here. But I know you want to color everywhere, but can we color on paper? And then it's like, oh yeah, I forgot that. Let's do color on paper instead of this whole narrative that he goes into. And that's just like a really simple example. But another one that it doesn't have to be, I regressed somebody, an adult who was struggling in her corporate job, just kind of feeling like she was never good enough. Her boss was highly critical. And the scene she went to was in high school, her senior year of high school, which I always like, if you don't go way back, then it's okay, but you're still getting good information. And she was showing her dad her report card. He was a school administrator, and she was like number 3 out of like, it was a huge high school, like 350 people. And she was proud of herself. She was like, look, Dad, I'm 3rd. And he said to her, why aren't you number 1? And then, we revisited a couple. And then when she went to college, she got a rejection letter from the college he wanted her to attend. And the way he looked at her, he didn't even have to say anything. She interpreted that to mean, I'm a disappointment. I'm not good enough. And the ultimate belief that we uncovered is my best will never be good enough. I'm always trying my best. I'm always trying to prove myself, but it doesn't even matter because my best is never good enough. So can you imagine how that affected her life in her relationship and how hard she felt like she had to try to be good enough in her work, where she was a successful person. Like, I was actually surprised to hear that she had these kind of thoughts of unworthiness and not being good enough, because she on the outside was so successful, but she had so much internal stress about it because she was always trying to be better to please her dad. And so she had to heal that belief. And then the next time I talked to her, this happened in one session. The next time I talked to her, she's like, yeah, I don't care what my boss says or thinks anymore, because it's not about me. It's about her, because I do good work.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yes, you got it.
and that's the thing though, when you look at it, like people that are super successful like that, they're normally driven by that insecurity of not being good enough in some way, shape or form, and trying to prove a point. But then it's like, at some point you get to this thing where it's like, what is this? Because like, I can't really get any more successful. Yeah, I'm still so miserable. And it's just realizing, that's what this is. Whether, again, even if it's like an ex-partner that said something, whatever it is, it's just that little niggling thing, just holding them back. And so you just remove it, it's like everything just starts to flow again.
Yeah. And it's funny because smart people, we're all smart people, will try to intellectualize ourselves into feeling better. Well, and people that are trying to make us feel better, if we share our feelings with them, we'll be like, no, that's not true. Daniel, look at you. You're successful. You help people. You have your podcast. You do this, you do that. You have this, you have that. And it's like you're supposed to go, oh yeah, you're right. But you're not, we're not getting to the program that's running, that's making you feel that way. And so people try to intellectualize themselves into feeling better, and that never works. We have to feel differently in our nervous systems, in our bones, in our bodies. And
also with that, sorry, but with that, I just want to lose this thought on there. Because what then happens is when you're saying that stuff and people are saying stuff back to you like that, it's then invalidating your feelings. It's then almost like gaslighting you into, well, what do you mean I don't feel that way? So then it can mess
with
your head
even
even more.
Well.
Absolutely, yeah. The term gaslighting gets thrown around a lot, and it's like it's negative, but it's like, but in your head you're like, what? Like, yeah, I should be happy, but then what you're doing is you're saying, especially as men, oh, I'm going to push that feeling back down there again. I'm not going to deal with that feeling. So, like I said, they mean well, but I think I've heard you talk about this as well, and it's something I always harp on about, is that if you're going to open up and going to talk to someone, make sure you're talking to the right person. Yeah. You don't just want to be talking to that person who means well, but is always going to say to you, oh, no, it's okay, it's fine. It's like, oh, so this feeling I'm feeling is wrong. It's not, okay, right, let's get out of the way.
Well, and recognize, and not even that, because sometimes it will be people that love us the most because they simply just want us to feel better, but recognize when it's happening and tell them what you need. So I feel like you're trying to talk me out of how I'm feeling. I know I don't want to be feeling this way. I know I shouldn't be feeling this way, but I do feel this way. And before we try to reframe it, that's where we go wrong with this false positivity and toxic positivity, is before we validate it, before we reframe it, I mean, we invalidate it. And so what happens is internally we shut down and we keep holding that feeling. But when you're told, man, I get why you feel that way. When I told you that story of that woman, now can't you understand? Oh my God, now I totally get why she feels the way she feels. Of course you do, right? Of course you feel that way. I would have felt that way in that same situation. And then after they've felt some sort of sense of relief for being heard, then you can say, is that true though? Like I know it feels true, and I want to honor your feelings, but now I want to take this statement out that you just said, and let's look at it. And is it true? And then you start to go, even I will have thoughts that I can catch and be like, that's just BS.
Mm-hmm. but isn't that true that we try and I think this is again not everything, but a lot of this space is people trying to sell the idea that you can get rid of these negative thoughts. And it's just like, oh, you just do this course or do this thing, and that's it. You're never going to have a negative thought again. And I always try and explain to people, like, that's not how the world works. Like, you're always going to have negative thoughts pop up because that's just what thoughts do. They're just completely random. And if anyone listening to this has ever meditated, you will know that just thoughts just randomly pop out of them and it's bizarre. But the goal is, as you said there, is just notice and be like, well, that's interesting. Where the hell's that come from? And just notice it, understand it, like just start to question it a bit. And then you realize that most of this stuff is just either stories we've said, there's no validity to it, there's nothing there. It's just stories that we tell ourselves. So what I try to say to people is like, what are the facts? Like whatever's popping up, whatever the situation, what are the facts that are there? And then you can do something.
And once you do have to heal those old hurts, but it's not like complicated, but once those are healed, it really is validating. One of the most powerful techniques I use that is not my own, it's inner child work, is I have the you that's you today step into that imagery in your mind of the you that's 17, right? I had that client do that. And I said, we freeze the scene and I say, the you that's you today, I want you to walk up to that 17-year-old. I want you to put your arms around her, face her squarely, look into her eyes. What do you want to tell her? And that is so powerful. And then she goes, you are good enough. You're amazing. And you don't even have to be number 3 to be good. I'm sorry he doesn't recognize that. But don't you dare make that mean something bad about you, because it will just hurt you. You are amazing. Your best is good enough. I love you. And I'm here for you. And then sometimes people will even say, and you're going to go on and accomplish this and this and this. So this moment does not define you. And that is so powerful and healing. So even if people don't want to go see a practitioner, if you can think of times that you were hurt, one that just, oh God, it just rocked me to my core was in 4th grade. In 4th grade, all the kids decided, because the popular girl decided nobody should talk to me. I forgot why. But so she told everybody in the class they weren't allowed to talk to me. And they listened. And so I was ostracized. And it was like I had cooties, right? I was in 4th grade. And that was devastating to me. And so I have had to heal that. And it was so powerful when I went back and talked to that version of me and was like, this is not about you. This is some random thing that so-and-so came up with. And all these people, they don't have their own voices yet. They don't have their own power yet. They're just ducks following, the line, towing the line and conforming for their safety so that they don't get rejected. Mm-hmm. And so, while it hurts, just go swing on the swing and enjoy the sunshine on your face and let this moment pass, because it doesn't last for long. And that was so healing for me.
And is it interesting as well, like when you go back and do those sorts of things? Again, I've done something similar, like writing letters and stuff like that. It just completely reframes how that whole situation pans out, because there's been times in my life as well that I've shared with long-term listeners of something that happened to me with an ex-girlfriend, and the story that I made up around this thing. I shared the story once on a podcast, and on that podcast, I took a step back and I went, I actually don't know how much of what I'm saying is true. I said the facts are this, this, and this, but the rest of the story, I think I've just said it to myself so many times to like validate how I was feeling at that time and make me the victim in this. I can't actually tell you. I can't actually tell you. So then once you replay it and realize, and then it just completely rechanges that narrative for you, and then allows you to kind of move past it and through whatever that thing is that you're feeling and experiencing. I just want to quickly link back as well, to sort of tie in what we're talking about here. There's something that I sort of mentioned earlier on about how depression and anxiety are symptoms. Can we dive into that? Because obviously we're diving into these beliefs and stuff. So how can these beliefs and these stories, which again, as we're now sort of alluding to, cause and effect. So these are like the cause. How do these things then manifest themselves as depression and anxiety? And what can we do about it? So once we've been diagnosed with anxiety, depression, whatever it is, how can we kind of go back and kind of recognize some of this stuff that we've been talking about?
So it is my experience that depression and anxiety are not the core issue that we're taught to believe that they are. They are symptoms of the core issue, and we've been talking about the core issues. And I believe traditional therapy attempts to heal these core issues. However, we can't heal them really and truly consciously until you learn how to kind of uncover them yourself. But so what can we do about it? It's not just the belief that I said that that 17-year-old believed, like, my best will never be good enough. I mean, that creates like an efforting, a trying, a believing, like not a self-hatred, but like just a low opinion of yourself, basically, right? And so once you reclaim that self-love, self-trust, self-compassion that you haven't had in years, it's the lack of those things. It's the harsh and critical inner talk, the way we talk to themselves, the way we feel about ourselves, that creates this like, I think, this unhappiness. And also many of us have become people pleasers and developed patterns of not speaking up, to not rock the boat. And so we aren't really expressing ourselves, our true selves. We don't feel truly accepted for who we are. And that doesn't feel very good. And then we end up in these lives and we wonder why we're unhappy. Now, anxiety is a little different. Anxiety is your body, your mind, your nervous system trying to tell you that there's a disturbance in the force, that you are not incongruent with yourself. You're in conflict somewhere and you aren't listening. And so all it's doing is upping the ante so that you will pay attention. But instead, we medicate ourselves. We learn techniques to eliminate anxiety instead of teaching people how to interpret, like find the message. What's the message? Once you can find the message, then you're free. Because then your thinking mind can come in and make the decision,
I think for me, it's like with the anxiety and depression, it's like the car warning light, isn't it? It's like it's telling you something's wrong, figure it out. Well, I said, I'm just going to go turn the engine light off. No, like you've got to figure out like what is it and fix that problem. So that's essentially what we're saying here, isn't it? Like the things, and it's funny, I was talking about this in school earlier on, is that there's nothing wrong with feeling anxious. There's nothing wrong with feeling depressed. They are natural, normal emotions.
Right.
I feel like nowadays a lot of people are like just blanketing themselves like, no, I have anxiety. And it's like, well, no, like you walking home by yourself as a female and really like do like dark roads and stuff. You want to be feeling anxious because you want to be ready to sort of run away and whatever it is. Like that's a normal reaction. You just pulling up on your drive on a nice sunny bright day and going to your front door and feeling that same feeling. It's not the same thing. So for me, it's just like it makes sense. We're using these words, but it's not actually explaining what it really is.
Right. Like the dark road situation, I don't think you're anxious. I think you're feeling unsafe.
And again, it's using like emotions wheel and stuff. It's like it's actually labeling what it is that we're feeling. Because I've had it before. Where literally last week, someone said, "Oh, I'm feeling anxious." I went, "I don't think that's what you mean." So again, we're just trying to understand, like, what is it that you actually mean with this? But I said, I didn't just sort of sidetrack there, but I think it's such a key thing to understand.
And when we're not living in a life in alignment with our true selves, like, I know that that sounds really fancy, but, and like you said, the memes, live your best life, be yourself, do you. Yeah. But the ugly truth is, I have done me, and I've been rejected for it, and I've been criticized and judged and ridiculed and told I was wrong, and me being me disappointed people. And so subconsciously you decided it's not safe to be me. It's not safe to express myself, my true self, because you were rejected and ridiculed and judged, and you disappointed people. And so like, the freedom is to love yourself enough that you really don't care, because you needed people's approval when you were younger, but you don't need it now. You want it, but you don't need it. But I'd much rather be happy doing what I want to do and having my life be the way I want it to be, rather than trying to force myself into a version that's acceptable for you. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Like, if we're wearing masks, aren't we? Like, we're wearing these masks. And as you sort of said there, is when relationships, wearing this mask. And again, even when people go through this journey as well, I would like to talk on this as well, because this experiences that I've had is when you start to make that identity shift, when you start to take that mask off for people, it can become so scary, because for them it's like, well, my whole life I've shown up to my partner as this version of me. I'm now basically taking this mask off. What if they don't like this version of me? Some people, when they start to go through this journey, it can become quite scary. It can become and almost feel very isolating, because they are, again, going back to what we said before, go to that place of vulnerability. They can be really scary, and that can then cause people to almost fight the process and not want to go through it.
Yeah, and the sad truth, and I'm all about telling people the ugly truth and not the photo art version of how things are going to be. But the truth is, if you start allowing yourself that true expression of yourself, not all relationships are going to survive that. I went through a divorce. When I started going through that, my ex-husband started saying things like, I miss the woman I married. I just wish you would be the way you used to be. Why do you have to grow and change? And I started over time to feel held back, right? Like, I had to, like, be smaller and put myself in this shell of an acceptable version for him. And it started to feel suffocating. And so over the years, right, because I had children with this man, and he's not a bad person. He's actually great, but he just didn't survive that change. And the relationship didn't survive that change. And so I had to step out of that relationship to feel free to be myself. And it was really funny, because I internally felt that way. But on social media, I had old friends from like 20 years, 10 years prior, messaging me saying, there's Claire. There's that smile we haven't seen in years, you know? And then now I'm remarried. I attracted a relationship because I was myself and feel safe to be myself and love this man so much. But I feel actually kind of bad. I wish I'd gone through this change before, because I mean, no one wants to go through a failed marriage. It's not awesome, but not all relationships are going to survive it.
Before we go on here, I just want to touch on this, because I think you touched on a really key point here, especially as a woman. Failed marriage, 3 kids. Like, on paper, that's people's worst nightmare. And that is why people will stay in these relationships for years, because they get to that stage that you said. So I just want to sort of stay on this. I didn't want to start just leave this.
Sure.
Because again, there's still more I want to talk about. But I think there's people listening to this that hearing what you're saying, and they're like, wow, like, I am stuck in this relationship. I know that it's suffocating me, like all that stuff you just described, but I have a kid or 2 kids or 3 kids. So can you just talk about that process and what it was like for you to actually go through it? And I love what you said there as well. I love this, is the fact that he's not a bad person. Because sometimes it's like, when you start to grow, when you start to evolve and start to really find your feet, you will naturally move away from people, and that's okay. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. they're just not the right person for you and this version of you. So can you talk about that? How did you navigate it? Because again, I imagine there was so many things that were going through your head there. Like I said, single mom, 3 kids, X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 all these paradigms.
So I had 2 kids with him.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't a decision that I made overnight. I was with him 4 years. You know, I was with him 14 years, but for 4 of the years, I knew that I had outgrown the relationship, but I didn't leave because, like you said, we had children together, and blowing up my life did not sound like fun. But, and there was a lot of, you know, a lot of things you think about. What about my financial security? Will I survive this? Will I, you know, I don't want to do this to my kids. That's what kept me there. I don't want to do this to my kids. But over time, not feeling truly loved and accepted for who I was, I started to feel like a shell of a person. The depression got worse. I was unhappy. And my life looked perfect from the outside, by the way. But on the inside, I felt like I was dying, or that I was suffocating. And I tried really hard to not feel that way, like we talk about, because if I feel that way, then I know somewhere deep inside that I'm going to have to leave, because I can't live the next 40 or 50 years like this. And there was a moment where it got so bad for me internally that, you know, we had nothing in common anymore. We didn't like, and he even said that. He's like, the only thing we have in common is the kids, you know, and we just grew apart. I just had this moment, and I was called selfish for this. I was the bad guy. I just said to him, I said, I want to be happy. Don't you want to be happy? We've tried really hard to be happy together, but it's not working out. Like really hard. We've tried really hard, and I want to be happy. And I know you want to be happy. He did not want the marriage to end. And so I came to a point where I said, I can't even stay for the kids anymore. And that's a very personal decision for a woman. I cannot say that I made the right choice. I made the choice that I had to at the time. It was, for me, a choice of survival.
Yeah.
And when my mom, she questioned my decision. Are you sure you want to do this, honey? The kids, everyone's worried about the kids. I'm like, I'm worried about the kids, you know? I said, Mom, I cry in the closet all the time. I go in the closet and I cry, and I'm unhappy, and I'm starting to have thoughts that I don't even want to live anymore. I need to save myself. And so a lot of people judge that, right? I should have just like put up with it for the kids. It's just a very personal, every marriage and every situation for a woman is different. And so I would just say, listen to yourself and honor yourself. And I've talked to a lot of women actually who are in very unhappy marriages, but they have decided to stay. And I don't judge them for that, because I know how hard it is to step out and to go through that. And it's not fun. However, you know, after a hellish year or so, I met my husband, who I told him on our first date, like, I don't want to fall in love. I don't want to be married. Like, and he was just like, okay.
What have I signed up for?
I'll call you again.
Yeah.
No, and I said that because there was so much chemistry, and I was like, oh crap, I'm in trouble. And those eyes are amazing, you know, and you better go away. But now I'm happy. I'm in a relationship with a man that knows me, all my parts, and loves me and accepts me. And, you know, we went through a little blip last month even. And I said, I'm sorry. I don't want to like be around you right now, because I don't want to affect your feeling state, because I can't pretend this. And he said, baby, like, I knew this wasn't going to be easy all the time, you know, like, we're married, like, you know, it's fine. And then like, you know, then I went through and worked out my stuff. And so I don't ever pretend to be perfect. And then I'm like, oh, whew, okay, we're good, you know? And I just think I feel so deeply and I can't pretend. I wish I could. That's probably my toxic trait when people talk about their toxic traits is I can't pretend. And so,
well, I feel like you did that for years anyway. We did it for 4 years, pretending to be happy and trying. But I feel like once you kind of realize that that's a thing for you, it's like, I'm not prepared to do that anymore. And the fact that you're in that relationship where you're allowed that space to actually to be, I think that's absolutely incredible. And I think one of the things that you've sort of said there, sort of looping back round is, would you say that now the other side of that hellish year and a bit, would you say that you have been better able to show up as a better mum and as a better partner now in this new relationship because you made that difficult thing? Because as you said,
absolutely,
people stay for the kids, they stay the ones who look after the kids. And again, like you said, no one's judging anyone, people got to make their own decisions. But would you say in hindsight that now you're able to show up as a better mum to the 2 kids that you had with your ex-partner?
Absolutely, because I'm a happier person. I'm a better mom. And the kids have said that I'm a better mom and he's a better dad, not together. They have said that. And so it's funny because you try to hide it from them, but you're not hiding much, you know? And it's really funny. We both told the judge in our mediation when we did divorce, he said to the judge, she's a phenomenal mom. And I said, he's an excellent dad. And so we split, you know, custody 50-50 because both of us respected and honored that in each other. But we didn't even realize that we weren't fooling the kids, you know, because they'll even tell us that. And I would say, I mean, we're not friends, like we don't go out and hang out and get dinner, but we're friendly and we are much better co-parents than we were husband and wife. And he's happy now. He's in a new relationship and he's happy. And I'm happy to see him happy. I you know, sometimes talking about letters, I write letters and, I realized that when I realized I was still energetically tied to some things in that marriage, I wrote a letter to him and like you said, there's his side, my side, and then there's the truth. And I honor that. And, you know, just like it was, because there was a lot of guilt that I carried for a lot of years about hurting him and breaking up the marriage. And I had to forgive myself.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing, isn't it? Like the forgiving yourself part. Because again, for me, it's one of the 3 things I say to people is they're not broken, they don't need fixing. You need to find yourself, forgive yourself, and love yourself. And that's one of the biggest things, that forgiveness. But as you sort of said, something you said earlier on, is that you were doing the best with the information that you had at that time. And you made the best decision of what you thought. But again, at some point, that guilt that you're holding or that shame, whatever people are holding, that's going to stop you from once again showing up as that true, authentic version of you. So again, we've got to work through that.
And that was a different woman. It's really funny. Like I've even joked with him that the me that's me today, if I was back in that situation, I think I could have made it work because I just have more skills and communication skills and awareness and tools. And I don't know, right? Because it takes 2 people, but I just was different.
But the same with anything, it's really interesting that it's bizarre we're having this conversation. It's weird how the universe works. Is that the school I was at today, after I'd done this assembly, one of the kids asked me, which basically said, have you ever apologized to any of your ex-girlfriends? Because basically, again, long-term listeners will know that I did not used to shower myself in glory when it came to relationships. Again, I fundamentally hated myself. So whenever anyone got close to me, I had to push them away and again, blah, blah, blah. But they were amazing people, absolutely amazing. I turned around and said, yes, the people I could reach out to, I have, and I've actually apologized, not for me, but for them, not for me. I didn't want them to say, oh, you're forgiven. But I realized some of the damage that I'd caused them by the actions that I'd taken and just being like, just so you know, like, this was never about you. This was a me problem. Like, I was the issue here. And then you sort of realize with the head I've got now, that's why that relationship didn't work. And I realized how.
I feel like you're taking too much responsibility, though. Like,
listen,
like
some of the stuff I've done. Some of the stuff I've done.
Okay, so you can own.
I was,
You can own your stuff, but you have to also understand that, like, it does take 2 to tango, right?
It absolutely does. But I stuff. Again, I'll happy to talk about that. I 100% here was the problem with this. And again, it's my inability to communicate, and that's what I love the fact that your partner now is the fact you have that space and you can communicate, and it's just a beautiful sort of.
So let's talk. Do you want to talk about communication for a minute?
Absolutely.
So what I learned, because, you know, I think a lot of us have reactive communication and just, you know, we're not taught how to talk. And when my current husband and I got together, we had an argument and I was just like, I don't want to do it this way. I've done this. I don't want to do it again. I want to be happy. Right. And so we were in the car. He left the car. He came in the house. I came in the house. All my defenses down. And I said, I love you. And I said, and you love me. And so we're not trying to take each other out at the knees. So why are we fighting like we are? I said, I want to do this differently. We have to do it differently. And I did say, and it wasn't, I said, because I won't stay. I said, I know myself. I won't stay because I've stayed when I was unhappy, and I've committed to myself that I won't do that. I won't stay if we don't change. And so he said, I don't want to do it like this either. I've done it like that too. And I will say it has taken us 5 years. But we committed to learning how to communicate. So it's argument-free communication. And they're ugly conversations sometimes. They're things we don't really want to know, don't want to talk about, but it's the truth. And how did it make you feel? And he's gotten so good at it, right? He's just like, I feel like you think I don't know how to do anything. And instead of me getting all defensive, I'll be like, well, what happened that made you feel that way? And then he'll do something. I'll be like, well, I can see how you'd feel that way. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, because I took over a situation with the kids or something like that. I can see how you'd feel that way. And I don't want you to feel that way. I'm sorry. I'll do better, you know, or, you know, instead of getting just, and then sometimes it's just like, you know, like, okay, what happened there? You know, what happened there? And then we'll talk about it. And it just, it's about, so I talk about the 4 traps. It used to be 3 traps of an argument. And now I say 4. There's 3 traps of an argument. Don't fall for them. It's really funny. I just literally was, one day I was like, oh my God, it's a formula. And so I
love a formula. I love a formula.
Yeah, it's a formula. And if you know the diagram of an argument, you'll avoid it. You'll be like, oh, yep, that's the step 1. Yep. Okay. I'm not going to fall for that one. So when you say something that makes someone uncomfortable, like, or that they don't want to hear, or it's going to rock the boat, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to be defensive. So that's trap 1. I didn't do that. That's not what I said. That's not what I did. I'm wonderful, all that, you know, that's the first thing they'll do. If that doesn't get you to stand down and change your narrative, then step 2 is they'll attack you. So then it's like, I didn't do that. You're so sensitive. You this, you that. And now we're talking about me, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about you, and now it's about me.
Yeah. We're talking about what you said or did that made me upset or I didn't like, and now we're talking about all my problems. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then, or what I did wrong. And then the third one is, I call it extrapolation. If that doesn't work, then they're going to extrapolate those traits about you to the last 10 years. This is how you are. You're always like this. You do this all the time. And do you see how far off topic we are? Mm-hmm. We're so off topic. And it's like a smoke and mirrors. It's like a distraction. And then the 4th thing that sadly I found is there's this period of punishment where with silent treatment and, you know, we act differently towards the person or they act differently towards us. And we do that subconsciously, not really intentionally, to get them to change their behavior or apologize. It's manipulative. Yep. And so if you can know those traps and even like bring it up, like in not obviously if you want to have the conversation with your partner to say, hey, let's avoid these things. And when we see them pop up, we have an agreement and that's what my husband and I did, that we're allowed to bring it up because, no one wants things to be pointed out, but we have an agreement, say, hey, I think we're in defensiveness now, or I think we're in attack. I feel attacked right now. And I think we're off topic. We need to come back to what we're trying to talk about. And we just keep bringing it back to the point, to the situation right now that we're talking about. And that's where we need to keep. And the reason people don't do that is because they don't want to be there. They don't want to be in that present moment and that ugly stuff so they'll extrapolate and attack and get defensive and punish. But if you stay with it, and your partner does not have to agree with you, does not have to see it from your point of view. People argue to try to get, I want him to agree with me or see that the way I see it is actually reasonable and true. But actually, it's okay for him to be different and think differently and not agree with me. That's okay. We don't have to argue this to the ground until he agrees with me, until I've broken him down, right? God, I don't want to do that, right? And so it's okay to say, wow, I think we see this really differently. I see it this way. I see you see it that way. I don't agree with you, but I also respect that you're a separate person and can disagree with me.
So that respect side of things, isn't it? And I think the whole key thing you sort of mentioned there is like that pre-framing of the conversation. And pre-framing the conversation is like, we're both on the same page here. Like, and the way sort of I describe this is like, you've got a little seed and then it's sprouting out all these different leaves. And most of the time the arguments are just pulling the leaves out, where actually you've got to get to the core thing. Like, what is the issue here that we're trying to discuss, rather than, as you said, going off topic, going here, there, and everywhere. And I said that's something that me and Katie do as well. Like, it's because even sometimes when, again, stuff gets said, if I catch myself or she catches herself, it's like, I just need a minute. So we'll literally almost like pause the conversation, just go and just collect our thoughts, get the emotion out of it, figure out what it is, and then come back again. Because again, Kate's got a thing where she's not the best at communicating how she feels. So I say, just take a second, like come back, and when you kind of understand where you're at with it, like where your head's at, come and communicate with me. Because if you can't communicate it, how am I supposed to know? So then you're kind of meeting where they're at, and there's like no immediate rush. It's like we take time. It's okay. We're trying to solve this problem. It doesn't need to be done now, but we can both agree this is the thing. We need to sort it. Where are we both at? And then we sort of go from there. Yeah.
And if me or Michael is getting reactive, the other person will say, what's really going on? What's really happening here? And then you can get to, well, I'm feeling disrespected. Well, then that's the problem. When we talk about root cause, it's not what you did. It's that you made your partner, or not even that you made, they just might have gotten triggered all on their own, right? That your partner is feeling disrespected. And so that's what you need to address, not the thing that was said or done. I mean, a little bit, but I had a client that her belief was, I don't matter. I'm insignificant. I don't matter. And she brought up that sometimes she would say something and her husband wouldn't respond. He just wouldn't respond. And so that obviously poked that wound of, I don't matter, right? I'm insignificant. I don't matter. I don't matter so much that you don't even need to respond to me when I'm speaking to you, right? And so they used to get in arguments about him not responding to her. And she instead, the next time, said, I feel really small when you don't respond to me. Like, I feel like I don't matter to you. Like, that's what it feels like. It feels like I don't matter. And then something changed, and he was like, oh my God, I don't want you to feel that way. I love you. I value you. And well, when you don't respond, I don't feel loved and valued. And that opened up a different kind of conversation. So it's about going to the root cause of like, what's really bothering you? What's really bothering you?
Exactly. What is it? Tell me it, so we can do. Tell me it.
Yeah. What is really going on here? And sometimes I'll ask my husband that, and he's clearly off, and he'll go nothing, and because I'm. I'll go, well, that's not true. Clearly.
And he's just like, oh, here we go.
But then I leave. I said, well, that's not true.
No, but he knows. And that's the thing. It's really interesting because like he knows what you do. So it's the same thing with Katie. I'll say something, and she's like, because obviously what I do. She's like, oh. It's like she knows that she can't. It's like, and I was like, I'm just gonna let that sit. When you're ready to tell me what it is.
Yeah, and then I'm doing the dishes. He takes out the trash. He comes in from taking out the trash. He puts his hand on the counter and goes, you know what it is? And I'm like, what is it, honey? Yeah, no, what is it? You know? And he's like, what bothered me? And then now we're talking, you know?
That's it.
But I can, and you got to get really comfortable with having those uncomfortable conversations, because now at least we're talking, we're solving, we're communicating. And when you don't do those things, resentment. We start to resent each other. And then when we resent each other, we don't want to be intimate with each other. Right. And then it just like, it's a wedge. And so
it's a very slippery slope.
Those conversations, if you can really get to what it is and listen, right? Like you love the person, like you care what they're feeling or thinking, without automatically trying to make them wrong, but really hear them. What is this person that you love going through right now? What story, even if it's like, what story are they making up? And my husband and I say that to each other a lot. The story I'm telling myself about this is,
that's a good one.
You know,
yeah.
And then once you can get to that, then it's a different relationship.
I really like that. The story that I'm telling myself is, I really, really like that. Yes, because like I said, it's I'm sitting with that one, because that's a really good phrase to use.
Because then it's not like you,
it's not fact,
you,
it's not true.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the story I'm telling myself about this is, and it's kind of also honoring, like, hey, listen, I'm not perfect. I'm probably reacting on an old wound, but so that this is where I'm going with it. And they can, and also, like, I think, you know, can't read minds. We can, I mean, we kind of can, but we can't. And so sometimes my husband's like a strong silent type. And so sometimes I'll start like making up what he's thinking about. And really he's just thinking about like,
just chilling.
He's like thinking about his workout earlier.
Yeah. Honestly, literally kept saying something. I'm like, yeah, I'm literally just sat watching TV. It's like, well, I feel like, no, I'm just watching TV. Like,
Or he's thinking about, you know, he does CrossFit. And so he's like calculating in his head about his workout. It has nothing to do with me. And so I just check in. Yeah.
Claire, honestly, this conversation has been amazing. And I said, I feel like I could talk to you for hours. I said this when we first originally spoke. Like, I feel like me and you could just chat for hours. This honestly has been absolutely incredible. Like, genuinely, thank you very much for the value they've added today. Where can people find out more information about you? So if people want to reach out, if people want to work with you, where's the best place for them to reach out? Sure.
So they can go to claireunkefer.com. And there's several ways you can reach out to me. You can also go to Instagram. My handle is @claire.unkefer, and you can DM me, and I'll get back to you. And
amazing. I've made sure that's all in the show notes as well, so people can connect. But honestly, Claire, thank you very much for your time today. It's been amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel.